Good evening, class, and thank you for tuning in for my article analysis on the reliability and validity of self-reported height and weight amongst high school students. According to Brenner, McManus, Galuska, Lowry, and Wexler, 2013, the prevalence of overweight among adolescents aged 12 to 19 years nearly tripled between the late 1970s and 1999, from the 5% to 14%. Not only is obesity an immediate health problem for adolescents, but it is also associated with obesity in adulthood as well as with diabetes and other chronic diseases. To make problems worse, CDC reports that the latest statistics show childhood obesity has more than doubled in children and quadrupled in adolescents in the past 30 years. The percentage of children ages 6 to 11 years in the United States who are obese increased from 7% in 1980 to nearly 18% in 2012. To assess trends in overweight among nationally representative samples of adolescents, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention added questions on the height and weight to its Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System, YRBSS, in 1999. The CDC uses self-reported height and weight data from these surveys to calculate body mass index, otherwise known as BMI, and classify students as at risk for overweight or overweight based on percentiles for their age and gender. The purpose of this study is to assess the reliability and validity of those self-reported questionnaires, specifically for height and weight, and variables calculated from these values in a diverse sample for adolescents. With regard to methods for data collection, a convenient sample of students, n equals 4,619, were drawn from 61 schools in 20 states plus the District of Columbia. They were from grades 9 through 12. 20 states selected were geographically dispersed to assure a diverse group, 48% from urban areas, 39% from suburban areas, and 13% from rural areas. The students reported their height and weight on 2 questionnaires administered approximately 2 weeks apart. Using a standard protocol, a subsample of these students, n equals 20, 2032, were weighed and had their weight measured following completion of the first questionnaire. They were randomly selected. Reason being, they are looking to correlate the raw observed data of students' height or weight to their answers on the self-administered surveys. The comparison of the two will address their query regarding the reliability and validity of self-reported height and weight amongst high school students. The next slide is a random sample diagram just to show how the students were randomly selected. The questionnaire was administered in a regular classroom setting and required approximately 40 minutes to complete. The survey or questionnaire was self-administered. A standard computer scannable questionnaire booklet contained questions and was used to record the responses. 2,965 students out of 4,619 out of the 39 of 61 schools were weighed and had their height measured to assess the validity of their height and weight questions. They used the process of randomization. Validity analyses were based on time 1 self-reported height and weight. Preliminary analysis of the discrepancy between self-reported and measured height and weight showed that 138 students had a weight or height discrepancy beyond 2 standard deviations of the mean. Further analysis revealed that 25% of these students came from 2 of the participating schools. Because of this, a systematic measurement error most likely occurred. Therefore, data from these schools were omitted, reducing the final sample to n equals 2032, as previously mentioned on a previous slide, for validity analysis. Self-reported height and weight were converted to metric units for comparison with the height and weight measurements and calculations of BMI. Self-reported and measured height and weight and BMI based on self-reported and measured height were set to missing if they exceeded plausible limits for age and gender subgroups. The results were as follows. Self-reported heights at time 1 and time 2 were highly correlated, and the mean difference between height at time 1 and time 2 was small. Results were similar for self-reported weight at time 1 and time 2 and body mass index calculated from these values. Although self-reported values of height and weight and BMI were highly correlated with their measured values on average, students overreported their height by 2.7 inches and underreported their weight by 3.5 pounds. Resulting BMI values were an average of 2.6 kilograms M2 lower when based on self-reported versus measured values. The percentages of students classified as overweight or at risk for overweight were therefore lower when based on self-reported rather than on measured values. White students were more likely than those in other race or ethnic groups to overreport their height, and the tendency to overreport height increased by grade. Female students were more likely than male students to underreport their weight. The study concluded that self-reported height, weight, and BMI calculated from these values were highly reliable but were discrepant from measured height, weight, and BMIs calculated from measured values. BMIs based on self-reported height and weight values therefore underestimate the prevalence of overweight in adolescent populations. Therefore, self-reported height and weight, in my opinion, is invalid given the results concluding that, on average, students overreport their height by 2.7 inches, underreported their weight by 3.5 kilograms, therefore concluding that the actual BMI concludes a higher rate of childhood obesity or adolescent obesity than documented from the self-report self-administered questionnaire. So what does this mean for the future? It means that self-administered surveys or questionnaires geared toward documenting the actual childhood obesity or adolescent obesity rate in high school students will result in a marginal error minus 2.7 inches and plus 3.5 pounds. Most people, when asked about their weight, shave a couple pounds off the actual number. Same goes for height, adding a couple inches here and there. Sampling the populace in order to document results for self-administered surveys relative to height and weight and expecting honest answers from the public, in my opinion, is a lost cause. Therefore, in order for researchers to document the true number, they will have to continue to document subsample real data for comparison with regard to their actual weight and actual height measurements. Following pages are the references that I utilized for this exercise, one of which was CDC, the other was Kernler, and the other was our Remler and Van Ryzen textbook. I want to thank you all for a great semester, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors.